Hello everyone. It's it's a great pleasure to show you coming back here to my channel. I want to say no more using some random stuff I've been using a lot lately. So this month was December, and December means Christmas. Christmas is part of the holiday that we have the most time of our lives. And you see, Christmas is part of the thing that we do. We spend our times with family and friends. And most importantly, you wait for Mr. Claus to come to your house to see if you got something for Christmas. And also, let me give you some heads up. We're going to read a story that was about this man who made a movie, one with Jim Carrey. So he voices Ebenezer Scrooge. Ebenezer Scrooge is a man, an old man who basically always has some sort of a dark, cold hearted ever since then. And there's a reason why he has dark, cold heart. This whole story comes in about Christmas, but you may not know that this story is going to be about ghosts of Christmas carols. There's one from the past, present, and the future, or the ghosts of yet to became. So it's going to be simple: Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. Who knows what's going to happen? So that's why he needs a little change of hearts before Christmas Day. But this whole story comes with one writer who created this. This is a story called A Christmas Carol, and its director, Charles Dickens. And also, have a Merry Christmas. Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of this barrel was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and a chief mourner. He seems to be dead, as a doornail. Mine, I don't mean to say I know, of my own knowledge, what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I, I might have been inclined myself to regard about the whole system, about the whole type of things that we came up. The only thing we came up with is some sort of suggestion, and we had to take things what takes of it. Oh, is that right? You put a coffin nail as a deadiest piece of ironmongery in a trade. And don't make things so much of it. I know he's dead. I've seen in my own eyes. And one more thing. Would you mind? Pay up. Is that where you come up? It's just for one thing what we need. Hold up. Do you know whatever it takes to make things so much of it? I never painted out of old Marley's name. I've always taken things so much of it because I always known that we've been partners for so long. But now I'm all to myself. Doesn't know why I take things so much of it. I take things so much granted. The mention of Marley's funeral being back to the point where I started from, there is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distantly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of a story that I'm going to relate. If we're not perfectly convinced that the Hamlet's father's dead, before the play began, there would be nothing more remarkable in his taking a stroll at night in an easterly wind upon his own ramparts than there will be any other middle-aged gentleman rush to the tourney out after dark in a breezy spot. You better back away. What do you mean I need to back away? You take things so much granted. You back away, you paddock. I take things no matter what. Oh, that's fine. That's good. My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me? No beggars. I always take things so much of it. Because I don't take things so much of my own personal beings. I always take things what cares. No eye at all is better than an evil eye. Dark master. But what does Scrooge care? It was the only thing that he liked. To edge his way along the crowded path of life. Weren't all human and Pokemon sympathetically to keep its distance? And what was knowing one's call nuts to Scrooge? Once upon a time, of all the good days in a year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy and whistle, and he could hear the people in the court outside go easing up and down, beating their hands upon their breast, and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city's clock had only just gone 3. It was quite dark already. It had not been light all day, and candles were flaring in the windows of the neighboring office, like ruddy smears upon the pliable brown hair. The fog came pouring in at every clink and keyhole, and there was no dents without that all through the core was of the narrowest house opposite were more phantoms. To see Digny cloud come dropping down, obscuring everything, one might have thought that nature lived hard by and was brewing on a large scale. I can't handle this. It's cold. It just seems so freezing. I wish I can tell him about the coal. I need some more of them to keep me warm. Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you. Ah, humbug. Christmas a humbug, Uncle. You don't mean that, I am sure. I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? And what reasons have you to be merry? You're poor enough. Come on, then. What right have you to be this mild? What reason that you have come be remorse? You are already rich enough. Bah, still a humbug. Don't be cross, Uncle. What else can I be? When I live in such a world of fools as this, Merry Christmas, out upon Merry Christmas. What Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer. A time for glancing your books and having every item in them enough. A round dozen of months presented dead against you. If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on, with Merry Christmas, should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stroke of holly through his heart like he should. Uncle, nephew, you keep your Christmas in my way. I keep this Christmas in my way, and you keep your Christmas in your way. Keep it? But you don't even keep it. Leave me alone then. And leave it alone. Much good may do it you, but much good it has ever done you. There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say. Christmas among the rest, but I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time when it comes around apart from the variation due to its sacred scar name and origin. And if anything belongs to it, it can be apart from that. as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of in a long calendar of a year when the men and women seem by one consent to open their shut up hearts freely and think of people below them as if they were fellow passengers to the grave and not another race of creatures upon on their journeys, and therefore I'll go, though it has never put a scrap of gold and silver in my pocket, and I believe it hasn't done me good, and it will do me good, and I say, God bless it! Let me hear another sound from you, and you keep your Christmas by losing your situations. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir. I wonder you don't go to the Parliament. You just feel like it's just more desperate. You always feel like you have some joyous effect if you get. Because soon or later you'll get to know what it feels of it. It's no wonder you go any places at all. It's exactly when how it takes. Especially that Parliament. Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Oh, really? I really want to make things so much effort with it. There are a lot of take things with it, nephew. Because soon later, they're going to be taking so much. Maybe I'll see you in hell first. But why? Why do you always have to be such a cold-hearted Uncle? Why? Then why did you get married? Because I fell in love. Because you fell in love. Good evening. Nay, Uncle. But you never come to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now? Good evening. I don't want nothing from you. I ask nothing from you. Why? Why can't we be friends? Good evening. I'm sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel, so which I have been a party. But I made it a trial and homage to Christmas. By keeping Christmas honor to the last. So Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good evening. And a Happy New Year too. Good evening. And there's another fellow here. My clerk worked at 15 shillings a week. And a wife and a family. Talk about Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam. Maybe that's a better detective, but I bet soon after the detective so much. It's like another fellow I ever seen. With my clock and with the 15 shiftings all the time a week, and the wife and the family talk about the Merry Christmas, I will retire to Bedlam. Reputation like that. There's a lot of some more differences. Excuse me, Scrooge and Marley, I believe. May I have a pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Well, Mr. Marley had been died these 7 years of Christmas. He died 7 years ago in this very night. We have no doubt his liberty is well represented by his savoring. There's going to be better takes into some operation of our own task. But we have no doubt that this liberty is well represented by his surviving partner. So it's just you then? Just me. We just had no doubt about this liberty is well represented by his surviving partner, Liberty. At this festive season of the year, there's going to be taking so much of it after all the task. This is going to be a little bit more differences after all. Well, this season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute who have suffered greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of a common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want for common comforts, sir. Are there no prisons? There's plenty of prisons. And the unit workhouse? They still in operation. There are still. Do you think that they're taking a lot of it? They're taking some more of the differences. Well, there's still. I wish I could say that we're not. You know what I mean? The treadmills and the poor law are in full vigor. Then, well, both of them are very busy, sir. Oh, I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. But I'm very glad to hear it. Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christians chairs of mind or body to the multitude, well, few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We chose this time because it is a time for all others, when it is kidney filled. And Ambulance rejoins, what shall I put you down for? Nothing. You wish to be anonymous? I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make myself merry Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I hope the establishments have mentioned they cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there. Well, many can't go there. Many would rather die from starvation and cold. If they would rather die, then they better do it. And to decrease the surplus population. Excuse me. Besides, I don't know that. But you might know it. It's not my business. It's enough for a man to understand his own business, but not to interfere with some other people. Mine occupies more consistently. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. Meanwhile, the fog and the darkness thickened so that people ran about with flaring links, proffering their servants to go before horses and carriage, and conduct them on their way. The ancient tower of a church whose gulf old bell was always peeping silly down at Scrooge out of a Gothic window in the wall, become invisible, and struck the hours and quarters in the clouds with tremendous vibrations afterwards, as if its teeth were chattering in its frozen head up there. The cold become latent in the main street at the corner of a court. Some liberators were repairing the gas pipes and had lighted a great fire in Bazaar, around which a party of Men and boys were gathered, warming their hands and winking their eyes before the blaze in rapture. The water pug, being left in solitude, its overflowing solely congealed and turned to mistrophic ice. The brightness of the shops were wholly green springs and sprigs and berries crackled in a lamp heat of a window, made pale face ruddy as they passed. Poulterers and grocers' trades become a splendid joke, a glorious pageant, with which it was next to possible to believe that such dull principles as bargain and sale had anything to do. The Lord Mayor, in a stronghold of the mighty mansion house, give orders to his faithful cooks and butlers to keep Christmas as the Lord Mayor household should, and even a little trailer, whom he had fined 5 shilling on the previous Monday of for being drunk and bloodthirsty in the street, straight up to tomorrow's pudding in his garret, while his lean wife and the baby sailed out to buy the beef. It's almost closing time. I've always known that it might be the day. You want all day tomorrow, I suppose? If quite convenient, sir. It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill used. I'll be bound. And yet you don't think me ill used when I pay a day's wages for no work. It's it's only once a year, sir. Because we try to make things so much effort with it soon after. Because who knows? We try to make so much of our own communications of our lives. A poor excuses for picking a man's pocket on every December 25th. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier next morning. The clerk, the clerk promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his wrist, for the he booze no great cost, no great coat, went down a slide on a chore trail at the end of a lane of boys, and the end of a lane of boys, 25 times, 20 times. In honor of its being Christmas Eve, and then ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could pelt to play blindman's buff. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and have a read all the newspaper, and beguiled the rest of the evening with his bunker book, and went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suit of room, in a lowering pile of building up yard, where it had so little business to be that one could scarcely help fancy it must have ran there. When was the young house, playing at hide and seek with others' houses, and forgotten the way out again. It was old enough now, dreary enough for nobody to live in it but Scrooge. The other rooms being all left out as office. The yard was so darkened that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope with his hands. The frog and frost so hung up about the black old gateway of his house. And it seemed as if the genius of the weather sat in a mournful meditation on the household. Now is the fact that there was nothing at all peculiar about the knocker on the door, except it was a very large. It was it was also the fact that Scrooge seen it. Night and morning, during the whole residence in that place. Also that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about them. As many men in the city of London, even including which is whole bold word, the corporation, alderman, and livery. Let it also bore in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since his last mention of his 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his keys in the lock of a door and a knocker, without us undergoing any interminated process of change. But Marley's face. But it changes to not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face was not in a dependable shadow as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on his ghostly forehead. The hair was curiously stared, as if my breath or as if by breath or hot air, and through the eyes were wide open, and they were perfectly motionless. That and its livery color made it horrible, but its horrible seemed to be in a sprite of the face and beyond its control, rather than a part of its own expression. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled, or that his blood was not conscious of a terrible sensation to which it had been a stranger from fantasy, would be untrue. But he put his head upon the key and had relinquished. Turner sternly walked in and lighting his candle. He did pause with a moment irresolution before he shuts the door, and he did look courteously behind at first, as if he half expected to be terrified with the sight of Marley's pigtail sticking out into a hall. But there was nothing on the back of the door except the screws and nuts that hold the knocker on. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Every room above and every cask and a wine merchant cellars below appeared to have a separate peal of echoes of its own. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs, slowly too, trimming his candle as he went. You may talk vigilantly about driving a coach and six up a good old flight of stairs, or through a bad young act of parliament. But I mean, to say you might have I got a hair's up that staircase, taking its boardwise, with that splendor bar towards the wall and doors towards the blusterades, and done it easy. There was plenty of wildness for that, and room to spare, which is perhaps the reason why Scrooge thought he saw a locomotive hearse going on before him in the gloom. Half a dozen gas lamps out of a street wouldn't have lightened the entry too well. So you may suppose that it was plenty dark with Scrooge dip. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for that. Darkness is cheap. Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his room to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection to the face to desire to do that. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, as all as they should. Nobody is under the table. Nobody's under the sofa. A small fire in the grate. Spoon and basin ready. And a little saucepan of gruel. Spoon had a coal in his hand. Upon the hob. Nobody is under the bed. Nobody's in the closet. Nobody in his dressing gown. Nobody was there. His dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Lumber room as usual. Old fire guard, old shoes, 2 fish baskets. Washing stood on 3 logs and a poker. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in. Double locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus, secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his girl. It was very low. Fire indeed. Nothing on such a bitter night. He was obliged to sit close to it and brood over it before he could extract the least sensation of warmth from such of a handful of fuel. The fireplace was the old one, built by the same Dutch I mentioned long ago. It pervaded all around the quite Dutch tiles, designed by illustrated by the scriptures. There were chimes, and Abel's of Pardora's daughters, Queen Sheba, angelic messengers descending through the air on clouds like a feathered beds. Abraham's Belshazzars, apostle, putting off of the sea in butter boats. hundreds of figures to extract his thoughts. And yet, to the face of Marley, 7 years dead, came like an ancient prophet's rod, and shallow up the hole. If each smooth tile had been a blank at first, with power to shape some pictures on its surface from the disjoint fragments of his thoughts, there would have been a copy of old Marley's head on every one of them. Humbug. After several turns, he sat down again. As he threw his head back in the chair, his glance happened to rest upon the bell, a disused bell that hung in the room and communicated for some purpose now forgotten with the chamber in the highest story of the building. It was a great astronomish, with a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but soon it rang so loudly it told every bell in the house. This might have lasted half a minute or a minute. It seems an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun together. They were succeeding by a clanging noise, a deep down below, as if some person were dragging heavy chains over the task in the wine merchant's cellar. Scrooge now remembered to have heard the ghosts in the haunted house were described as drag chains. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound. Then he heard a noise much louder on the floors below. Then coming up the stairs, then coming through straight towards his door. It's humbug still. I won't believe it. His color changed through when, without a pause, it came on through the heavy door and passed into the room before his eyes. Upon his coming in, the dying flame leaped up as though it cried, "I know him, Marley ghost," and fell again. The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights and boots, the tassels on the latter bristling like his pigtail, and his coat skirt, and the hair upon his head. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail. It was made, for Scrooge observed closely, for cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledger, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, he could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. Scrooge had often heard it said Marley had no bowels, but he had never believed it until now. No, but he did believe it even now. Though he looked the phantom through and through and saw it standing before him. Though he felt the chilling influence of its dead cold eyes. and mark this very texture of full of kinship bound about its head and chain, which rapper he had not obscured before. He was still incredulous and fought against his sense. How now? What do you want from me? Much. Who are you? Ask me who I was. Who are you? Who were you then? You're peculiar for a shade? He was going to say shade, right? In life, I was in your part. I was in your job career. Slash your partner, Jacob Marley. Can you sit down? I can. Then do it then. You don't believe in me? I don't. What evidence you would have of my reality beyond that of your sense? I don't know. It's like the very thing of it. It's just because it feels difficult. What evidence you have of the reality beyond that of a sense? I don't know. Why do you doubt your sense? Because a slight disorder of the stomach makes some cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a bolted of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underownable potato. The more of a gravy than a grave about you, whatever you are. There are a lot of things you don't know. I feel things are gonna take up some sort of a very unexpected. I do make things so much of it every time. But soon later it's gonna take up some sort of a big as expected. Cause soon later, you may never know how it feels to take things so much of a complimentary. You seen this toothpick? I do. Well, you're not looking at it, but I see it, notwithstanding. Well, but I have to swallow this, and be the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins. All of my own creation. Humbug, I tell you. Humbug. Ah. Huh. Mercy. I wasn't unfortunate about that. I didn't know. You take things so much of it after all. Mercy. Dreadful apparition. Why do you take things so much of it? Well, it's not that simple. It's like a lot of it I take up. Man of a whirly mind. Do you believe in me or not? I do. I must. But why do spirits walk on the earth and do what they came to me? It required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if the spirit goes not faith in life, it is commend to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Whole world is me. And witness and what it can not be shared. but might have shared on earth and turned to happiness. You're flattered. Tell me why. I wear the chains I forged in life. I made it by link and yard by yard. I created it of my own free will, and of my own free will I wear it. It is pattern strange to you. Or will you know? The weight and length the strong coil you bear yourself. It was full of heavy, and as long as this 7 Christmas years ago, you have labored on it since it is Pandora's chain. Jacob. Oh, Jacob Marley. Tell me more. Jacob. I have none to give. It was come from the other regions of the Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our county house. Mark me. In my spirit, in life, never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money's chaining hole, and where a journey lies before me. You must have been very slow about it, Jacob. Like a lot. Slow? 7 years dead and traveling all the time. The whole time. No rest, no peace. Incessant torture of remorse. You travel fast. On the wings of the wind. You might have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years. Really? When was the time you ever take things so much granted about your own personal reactions? It seems that kind of official. There are a lot of it. Oh. Captive, bond, and double iron. Not to know that age of innocent labor by immortal creatures. For this earth must pass into eternity before the good of the which it has suspendable is all developed. Not to know that any Christian spirit, working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. Not to know that there's no space of regret can make demands of one life's opportunity misuse. Yes, such as I always I. But you've always been a good man of business, Jacob. Business? Ha ha. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the incomparable ocean of my business. At this time of rolling year, I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fell beings with my eyes turned down, and never raised them to that blessed star which lead the wise men to the poor door? There were no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me. And hear me, the time has nearly gone. Oh well, but don't be so hard upon me. Don't be flowered, Jacob. And how, how it is that I appear before you in a shape that I can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible besides you may and may in a day. There is no light part of my penance. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope to escape in my fate. A chance of hope in my procuring Ebenezer. You've always been a good friend to me. Think you will be haunted by 3 spirits. That's the chance of hope that you mentioned, Jacob? It is? I think I wrote it on. Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path that I trend. Except the first tomorrow when the bell tolls at 1. Could I make it all at once and have it over, Jacob? Expect the second on the next night at the same hour, and the third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Whoa! Look to see me no more. And look at that. For your own sake, you remember what has passed between us. What it has passed between us. When it has said these words, the spectral look its wrapper from the table, bowed its round its head, as before. Scrooge knew this by the smart sound its teeth made when the jaws were brought together by the bandage. He ventured to raise his eyes again, and found his supernatural visitors confronting him in the erect attitude, with its chain wounded over about its arm. The creation walked backwards with him. At every step it looked, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. It beckoned Scrooge an approach, which Wood he did. And when they were within 2 paces of each other, Marley's ghost held up its hand, and it came no nearer. Scrooge stopped, not so much in obedience as in surprise and fear from on the raising of the hand. He became sensible of confused noises in the air, intolerant sounds of lamentations and regret, wailing expressively, sorrowful, and a sulphur-colored street. The speck, after listening for the moment, joined in a mournful degree and floated out upon the bright dark light. Scrooge followed to the window despite his curiosity. He looked out. The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste, and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few, they might be guilty governments, were linked together. None was free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He had been quite familiar with one of the old ghosts in a white rich coat, with a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle. He cried out piteously at being unable to assist a rich woman with an infant, whom it saw below upon the doorstep. A mystery with them all was clearly that they sought to interfere for good in human manners and had lost the power forever. Whether these creatures fainted to mist or mist and shrouded them, he couldn't tell. But they and their spirits faded together, and the night became as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door which the ghost had entered. It was a double locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable, and being the motion he had undergone, or the fatuous of the day, of his glimpse in the invisible world, or the dual conversion of the ghost, a lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, went straight to bed without undressing, and fell asleep upon instant.